Yeah, welcome back to the show. You're listening to Angie, the voice Montoute here on wVent 93.5 and 94.7. I'm very happy to say that we have our guests here in studio. Just in case you're just tuning in, we are talking about exactly what is going on. You know, what's going on with regards to the increases that we're having in rape and sexual violence here in St. Lucia. Now, of course, it would be remiss of us, I think, not to also discuss domestic violence, because it's all part of it, sadly. But I want to introduce some of our guests that we have this morning. We have Chams Gasperd, and she is the Director of Gender Relations. Good morning to you, Chams. Well, good morning, Chams.
Good morning.
Ah, there you go. I have you now. Fantastic. And how are you?
I'm great, thanks.
It's really a pleasure to have you here this morning. Also, I'm going to say good morning to Janelle Nelson, clinical psychologist at the Division of Human Services. Good morning, Janelle.
Hi, good morning.
All right, lovely to have you here. And also Silvie Edwards. She is the manager and councillor of the Women's Support Centre. Good morning to you, Silvie.
Good morning, Angie.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure to have you, all three of you here. Going to say good morning to Mr. Hippolyte. Apparently he is on his way. He did let me know that he's going to be running late, so he will be coming in at some point, not too long from now. All right, so there you are. That's our topic this morning. I just felt that this is something that's extremely important and it needed to be discussed, because whenever I turn on the television, it really, really, breaks my heart when I get the news again of somebody who has been hurt, somebody who has been violated in some way, somebody who is even dead, sadly. And we've had a few. Right now we have a couple of women who've been murdered. And, I just want to throw this out to you. I'm going to ask you all the initial question. Why is it that we seem to have rape and sexual violence on the increase? I'm going to start with you, Chams.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for that question. I am not sure that we can safely say that there is an increase. Because although the numbers actually show, what we can definitely say is there's an increase in the number of reported cases. There could be an increase in the number of incidents, yes, but we do not have the research to support that. What we know is that there's been a lot of outreach, a lot of public education, a lot of awareness building in encouraging victims to report, in encouraging victims to seek help, in encouraging victims to seek out. So perhaps what we're seeing is really an increase in the number of reported cases
rather than an increase in violence.
Rather than an increase in the number of incidents.
Wow, okay, that's interesting. Okay, what about you, Silvie? Let's ask you, because you're actually there on the ground. You're actually helping to counsel women at your support centre. What do you think with regards to the increase?
I would agree with Ms. Gasperd. I think it's the number of reported cases that's on a rise, but it's not that it is it's increasing. What we see happening a lot of the times, a lot of sensitization is being done. We go out to the communities, we do a lot of outreach, we speak to people, but there are so many things that would contribute to people remaining. So you see a lot of people sometimes, they choose to remain, making themselves more vulnerable because of different reasons. For example, they may be afraid or they may be coerced. There are a number of reasons that would contribute to them remaining and thus making them more vulnerable.
Okay, all right. And Janelle?
Yes, definitely. I do agree that there's not necessarily an increase in the number of cases, the number of incidents, but rather an increase in the number of reporting. And like we said previously, there are a number of factors that can be contributing to that. Definitely at the Division of Human Services, we have our hands full when it comes to dealing with violence against children, violence against families, women in particular. And as a result, the children are definitely affected. But it's not necessarily an indication of an increase in society, but rather an increase in reporting.
All right. Before I go to Mr. Hippolyte, I'm going to throw this one in, because I can understand when you talk about that there is possibly, it's more about people reporting as opposed to an increase in the violence. But certainly we do have an increase in terms of the amount of women that we now have dead, allegedly, and, some cases are still being reported. But this is surely unprecedented for us here in St. Lucia, that number of women who have been murdered, even if it's allegedly. So that's not about people deciding that they're going to report it or not. And so there could be a trend with regards to increases in violence in the sense of what we're seeing globally. Mr. Hippolyte, what do you say to that?
Okay, good morning, everyone. No, definitely I have to agree with Ms. Gasperd and everyone else on the panel. It is a situation where, when you look at the age we're living in, all the relevant stakeholders have educated and put forth this information out there to victims that they listen, you need to make the reports. You're not alone in this. We're there to assist you. We're there to help you. Especially when it comes to my organization. When you look at the efforts of the vulnerable persons team within the Royal St. Lucia Police Force, they go out there, they go out in the communities, because sometimes or most times those victims of sexual offenses, they feel even in reporting the matter to somebody else, it's almost like they've been victimized all over again.
Mm-hmm.
So we've come a long way with sensitization and letting persons know that we're here to assist them. And so therefore it is a case in more reported cases being made. So this is something, and we continue. I think, honestly, this is just the tip of the iceberg, because most times, Angie, the perpetrators or the suspects in these matters are actually known by the victim.
Yeah. And that's a statistic that comes up globally, actually. And that's frightening, isn't it? That it's someone you know that would perpetrate that type of violence against you. Look, we're going to go to a break. We need to pay some bills. When we come back, we'll get fully into this discussion show. We are looking at the possibilities of rape increase in St. Lucia. We've got a call coming in here. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Angie.
Good morning.
I don't want to take much of your time. I want your panel to look at whether or not, as a society, we are teaching tolerance, patience, and delayed gratification.
Yeah, good points.
All right, so I'll listen.
You're going to listen off here? All right, thank you, caller. Did you all hear what the contributor said?
Yes.
All right, okay. Let's start with. I'm going to start with you, Janelle.
Yeah. Quite rightly. I think we live in a society now where instant gratification is the norm. In terms of the way we rear our children. Everything is instant, and they're not taught patience. They're not taught tolerance, and that too contributes to the type of individual that they become as adults.
Yes.
Where, like the gentleman quite rightly said, instant gratification. It has to happen right now, and respect for each other and respect for women in particular is affected.
Chams.
Yeah, definitely. And also I think quite apart from not instilling those important values in our young people, there are the mixed signals that we send out. If we're in a particular position, we think we can speak in a certain way publicly, and we don't understand the impression that lives on in impressionable minds. The mixed signals we send out in the music, very good music, and so. But when we stop to listen to the lyrics, when we a couple of days ago, I was having a discussion in the office about a popular North American song. What do you mean when you say no? I mean, what else can you mean when you say no? So we have all these confusing things. We have, the accessibility. There are really no clear lines, no boundaries, and so it is very confusing for young minds. And we tell them one thing to do, we behave differently as adults. There's just a lot of confusion going on, and we need to, a lot of the basic institutions that were available to assist in our formation, these things have been eroded, and so there is really little direction, little clear guidance and support. Major issue we have is the issue of absentee fathers in the homes. We have the society changing completely, where you have the primary caregivers, single mothers, having to work extended hours on weekends. So quite apart from the society not living up to being that example to young persons, we have the caregivers being pulled in another direction. They have to go out to work to support the children, but they're not there to just be, you know, that security for the kids. A lot of times children are the most unsafe place for them to be in is in the home, when a caregiver leaves them in trust with somebody else, you know. So there are a lot of things as a society that have been eroded, a lot of mixed signals, a lot of mixed messages sending out, which creates a lot of confusion in the minds of our young persons.
All right, I can see, Silvie, you really want to come in there. There's steam coming out of your nostrils. Go ahead.
I tend to agree with Ms. Gasperd, because before, where you had an entire family with the grandparents and so many other people raising a child, now most kids are left on their own to take care of themselves. Parents have to go out to work. A lot of societal pressure. I do not think that the values are not being taught to the kids, but you know, the other things that they're being bombarded. When you look at the ads, they get things easily. They want things, they see it being advertised, and so they go for it because that's the norm. If I do not have it, I do not belong. Children want to belong to certain groups, and so sometimes you would find they would deviate from what is normal, from what is right, just to be accepted by our society. So when you look, it is not just the children, you know, on their own, but it's because of all the pressures that are being put on them. So they're forced to go out there to look for the things that they feel comfortable with, to associate themselves with the groups that they feel comfortable with, and those groups may not be necessarily be the right groups for them, but because they're looking for a space, they want to belong, you find they would just join most of those groups.
And then, you know, the self-gratification, not being able to wait. They say, well, I want this, so therefore if I go here and get it, even if it's stealing or violence, I'll get it. Mr. Hippolyte, please, as the man on the panel, please, let's hear what you have to say.
We need to go back to the business of parenting. Because yes, we now have a fast-paced world where there's so much demand on, especially, you know, the young single mothers, the weary work and all that. But at the same time, while this is going on, our kids are being raised by social media and technology. It is a serious thing. Can something be done? I don't know. What can we do? We need to have more programs on more communication in letting persons know the dangers of technology and social media. It is sad, Angie, that now if you were to walk into a normal Lucian home, a typical family home, and if you were to monitor what's going on in the family, you hardly see social interaction going on, you know. Everyone is on their own with their iPads, with their smartphones, and what we don't understand is they're being socialized by a wider audience.
And they're being modeled.
And they're being modeled,
You see, the thing is, I think the deeper thing that we really have to not skim over, and then we'll go back to the sexual violence, etc. But people's minds and their behaviors are being shaped, and their emotions are being shaped, as you say, by this social media, by the fact that they're stressed, by the fact that they're not talking and we're not socializing and we're not communicating, and that we're finding other means, unhealthy means, for us to get through life. And little children, they don't understand a lot of their choices and why they're based this way. Look, Janelle, I'd really like you to just chime in on this, because often you have, I'm not going to stereotype young mothers, single mothers. I think often they're trying to do the best job that they can do. But they themselves come from a bad place. Then we don't have the fathers there, all right? Usually the dads are in a bad place too. Because if we look at the families they came from, it's a cycle.
That's right.
Let us chime in terms of what's happening in our St. Lucia.
I think one of the things that we really need to focus on and to be mindful of is the fact that the adults that we have in society today, their actions, their behavior, their core beliefs, their attitudes stem from what would have occurred during their childhood.
And that's for all of us.
And that's for all of us. The kind of situation that we grew up in, we learn behavior. We learn how to socialize. We learn all these social skills. We learn interaction. All these things we learn during childhood. And that's why it's critical to provide the most positive and safe environment for children. Research has shown that boys who come from domestic violence situations are more likely to exhibit aggressive behavior in relationships as adults. Females, girls who are in domestic violence situations with their parents are more likely to accept domestic violence as adults.
Yeah.
That's the research.
And not even that. On some level, they think that this violence is normal.
It's normal, that's right.
And I think that's even more dangerous,
That's right.
isn't it?
That's right. That's right.
Chams, you know, look, you've been the director now for a while. You have heard some cases. You've seen a lot in your time, you know, at the helm, right? What do you think? What do you think we can begin to do? Because it's great for us to have discussions, but I really think if we can begin to put some solutions out there as well. Because we have listeners who are listening.
I think really as a society we need to, all of us have to accept our roles, that we need to provide that support. Like Janelle said, the adults we have today are really a product of where they came from. And I don't think that we understand how pervasive abuse and has been through the years. Now we are hearing about it. But this is something that has been happening in this society and in all societies. Perhaps it is something that we need to look at. The Caribbean, for example, has one of the highest rates of rapes in the world, you know, as for population. So there is a deeper something happening in this region.
Yeah, but Chams, you know, you've said that in the highest in the world. It's not that long ago that we come from an enslaved past, all right? And when you talk about a cycle that is perpetuated, you know, whether people want to accept it or not, minds and behavior are carved by the actions of what you see and what you have lived.
Exactly.
So is it hard for us to put the two together? And you see, it's...
And I think this part of our, you know, this thing that has shaped us, this slavery, I think as a region we have not paid enough attention to how it impacts our development today. You hear people tell you, well, it happened, let's forget it and move on. But we're not able to move on. The very attitude of our men towards their children. We're asking men to be fathers where they have no example. They don't know how to be fathers. And that's the reality.
Yeah.
And, you know, so we need to get to that core. We need to understand. And as well as having to grapple with all of that, when you have a breakdown, the lack of support, the society on a whole seems overwhelmed. The Departments of Human Services, Gender Relations, we sometimes are very overwhelmed having to address that. So you don't have the support from inside. You cannot necessarily get everything you need from the existing agencies. So one can understand where there is that shortfall. So we need to, you know, really as a nation, we need to understand our roles, to recognize if something is looking strange, to report, to provide that support, to use our resources in whatever way we can to get into after-school programs, to mentor young persons, to be there for them, not be the adults who take advantage of them and who hurt them, but be persons who can lend that support to the single mother, be that role model, that father role model, you know, who can be there to support that mother in times when she just doesn't know how to, she can be a mother, but she certainly doesn't know how to be that male figure to give that young man an example of what it is to be a man. So we need to really assess our contributions as a society and not leave it only we hear, what is government doing? We hear that time and time again, but each of us have a responsibility, because as much as we want to think, well, it will affect those out there because we're in a certain place behind our wrought irons, it comes to us. It
comes to your front
It comes
door.
to your front door.
Oh, yes.
So it's something we cannot ignore. It is incumbent on each and every one of us in this society to recognize the role we play, either to contribute to the dysfunction and, take care of ourselves, or to support the building of a stronger, productive, sustainable society.
You're welcome back to the show. The time is now 10 minutes to the top of the hour. And as always, the conversation in between the break gets very hot. Very hot. And Janelle, you wanted to make a particular point. You just wanted to make sure that we didn't lose this point. Go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's imperative for us as a society, if we are truly serious about dealing with this issue of violence against women, that we should not compartmentalize these issues. Violence on the whole should be unacceptable. It can't be that where situations of violence against women are now, that situation is now raising its head, that we are drawn to that particular issue and more lenient towards violence against children. When we speak of corporal punishment, violence against children, that is seen as acceptable in some parts. If we are truly going to deal with violence, it must be violence, zero tolerance.
Yeah, across the board.
Across the board.
Yeah, good point. And Mr. Hippolyte, you were wanting to chime in, 'cause
Yeah, definitely, because, and I'm happy that she said that across the board, because there's this silent thing.
So hold on a minute. I'm so sorry. Could you just give your title for the listeners, please, so that they understand who you are?
Oh, yes, definitely. Yes, I was a little late. Listeners, this is the press officer of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force, Corporal Zachery Hippolyte. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's this silent thinking. We have not really been made aware of the fact of how much violence there is against men. And men, I interact with them all the time. There are things going on. They're being assaulted. They're being sexually assaulted. Men are actually being raped also by females. I'm telling you, this is happening.
Yes.
But we have not evolved as a society to let our men know that you're being violated. You can't make a report because they feel, listen, men have been socialized to be macho. I'm supposed to be the man. I'm supposed to be the protector.
Yeah.
I cannot go and tell some other individual that a woman just assaulted me or just raped me or whatever. Nah, people will laugh at me. So it will take some time, but we need to start speaking about these issues when it comes to violence against men also.
Yeah.
So no tolerance.
And
I agree
not
with
only
you.
that,
zero tolerance across the board.
And to be honest with you, when we talk about sexual offences, it is across the board. It's women, it's children, it's men, all right? And we cannot negate that. The most vulnerable in our society, the children, what about them?
That's right.
And then we just had an elderly woman,
Yes.
What,
right.
what was she, 80-something?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This is just tragic. And that's why I think it's important that we look at what is going on in the minds of people. Are we becoming a less caring nation on the whole? What's going on?
You see, what happens as well when you do the research, you find that in societies where there is chronic societal stress, and that means the stress levels of the majority of persons in society is so high that it's become chronic. When that happens, there's always an increase in suicide. There's always an increase in violence against the most vulnerable groups. And again, it goes back to socializing. Most people have not been taught the requisite skills in channeling their emotions and dealing with their stress and coping with the stresses of life.
Or even understanding that they can do that.
That's right. And it boils down to their parenting. If
Oh,
parents
yes.
don't pass these skills on to their children when they become adults, they are incapable of dealing with the stresses of society.
Yeah, but very often the sad thing about it is this is the reality that we have. You can't do better until you know better. And sometimes you outgrow your parents by miles.
Oh, yes.
And they're going to tell you that they're right, and they're going to tell you that they know, but I can tell you, you are the one that has to fix yourself. You're not going to get help from your parents.
But I'll tell you something. A large part of the violence as well is a lot of displacement that's happening. That's a psychological term. And what it means is that if a gentleman is at work and he's under a lot of stress from his boss, his superior, he is unable to release that stress and show and say exactly what he wants to his boss
In a positive way.
in a positive way.
Yeah.
And therefore, when he goes home,
He releases
he
it.
releases on his family.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that happening. What we can do as a society in recognition of that is to say to these employers, listen, it's tough on everyone. Make outlets for your employees. If it's having psychological services, having counseling services, so that when people feel the burden, there's an avenue, there's someone that they can speak to.
Maybe, but when you look at human beings, and I'm sure you definitely know about psychology more than me, but it seems to show as if like just asking them is just not enough. Maybe we need to institute laws to ensure that these services are actually a part of probably getting your work permit or whatever for your license to operate. We need to institute those laws because you're going to ask them, trust me. Okay, we'll listen. It's not going to happen.
Definitely. I fully support that.
And it's not just only that. Sometimes you find in the organization they have a department responsible for human resource and personal growth and development. That can be incorporated into the workplace where you teach people various coping skills. When you look at society today, you can see that things are rough, things are tough. And when things are difficult, people do not know what to do. They resort to anything to get, like we said earlier on, gratified. They will need that gratification, and so they will resort to anything. And so sometimes, like we said earlier on, issues, stress, people do not know how to deal with it. They do not know how to handle it. Sometimes it is displaced anger. You're not the one who caused the person to be angry, but like Gina said earlier on, it may be an issue at work, but I cannot say to my boss that I'm not pleased, I'm not happy, because I'm afraid that I may lose my job as a result. So I come home extremely upset, extremely angry. My partner or the children are the weaker ones. I cannot see them. The simplest thing that they would say would probably just cause, the battering to begin, or the emotional abuse to start. And so we're saying people need coping skills, and that is a lot of the work that we do at the center, because there are situations that is not all up to you, that you cannot change, because it depends on the other person. And if that other person does not find the help or does not accept that I have an issue, the behavior won't change. So if you choose to remain in a situation, you need to begin to get coping skills. How do you deal with the situation so that it will not cause more stress to you as an individual? And that is what we need to begin to teach our children, even in school. To resolve conflicts in school. At the school level, you find many kids do not know how to resolve conflicts. You find them arguing. They have poor impulse control.
Silvie, how can children know how to resolve a conflict, or even to have any sort of effective communication, when you look at the parents? Sometimes when you look at the parents, when they come into the school to dialogue with a teacher, it's conflict. There's no resolution there. Right?
It's true.
So I always say, excuse me, when we look at our society, our beautiful St.lucia, and I'll use an old West Indian term that I used to hear when I was young, we the big people have to take responsibility.
Precisely.
And it is us that have to begin to do something to make difference.
We need to, Angie, it's important that we need to break away from the stereotypes. Even within the functioning within the difficult economic times, we still feel that men are supposed to be the providers. You would find a relationship where the female partner is gainfully employed and can take care, can handle things while perhaps her partner, her male partner, is unemployed or he's just lost his job. But there will be pressures in that relationship because she was brought up to believe that a man is supposed to provide. And you have the frustration.
And him as well.
Yeah, right.
And he feels that, he's not able to provide, so he begins to want to control. He's less of a man. And he, that behavior, it spreads into other things where he begins to want to control and to create that tension.
That's a
so
great
we need
point.
to re-examine those gender stereotypes that we've been made to believe.
And
And
let us just
understand that these things are dynamic, that the roles have to change with the times, and begin to just have that new paradigm where we look at things differently and understand our role, which is one to support and to examine our strengths at a particular time, and let in relationships, let what works for you internally work for you and not be what society demands that you become.
Chams, you know what? I think that's probably one of the best points that we've had so far. I tell you why, because it permeates throughout the whole society and throughout decades of life. We are passed down these ideologies and these beliefs. And that alone can give you stress. The fact that you're working, you can earn the money, and your partner's not, you feel stressed because he's not. And he's a good man, and then all of a sudden he's not a good man because he's not working, or he's not earning enough.
Exactly.
Now, even if you don't say that, he feels emasculated himself because he's supposed to be providing. And this permeates throughout. And so, Chams, look, we're talking here today. What about the friends of these people, of this couple? The friends are going to put additional pressure.
Exactly.
What
Friends,
kind
family.
of man? What kind of man you have?
That's right.
You're
one
going to lose that
but
woman.
one of the first things we hear, and even today as young women, is look for a man who can do something for you.
Only.
Not
Never what you can do for
not
yourself.
what can you do for yourself, but you look for a man who can do something for you. And no matter how successful you've become, there's something missing if you don't have that man who can so-called do something for you.
Good point.
And you hold on to that man, whether he's abusive, whether he takes away from what you have, whether
Whether
he
you
steps
love
in your
him,
way,
whether you like
love
him
or not,
or even fancy him.
He stands in the way of your personal development, your goals, the way you want to. But you have that man, he can't do anything for you really, but it's the fact that he's there. There's an appearance that
Not only
he
that.
can do something
Yeah,
for
but
you.
even when he can do something for you, because there's many different types of men.
Exactly.
You might have a
comes with
relationship,
it,
right?
yeah.
You might have a relationship like brother and sister. There's that. Then you might have a relationship where I've heard women talking about this man that they don't love. When you hear the conversations, it's not nice.
And and then again we bring children into these dysfunctions. Children see no affection, no understanding, no cooperation, no respect.
Yeah, that's
paid
the bottom
to one
line.
another. No, you don't respect the father. The mother doesn't respect the father has no respect for the mother. What do we want the children to do? And we turn around expecting the children to miraculously, as was said before, they have to cope with all the other influences that they're exposed to. We want them to do what's right.
But hence I come back to our caller. 2 key points for me. Self-gratification and patience, right? The self-gratification of now. When 2 people are together, and maybe you happen to be in a circumstance, right? If fundamentally you have a good person, whether it be the man or the woman, but they are good, and they love you, and you're willing to work, what has happened to our patience? What is wrong with something taking 5 years, 6 years, 7 years? How many years, right? That's patience. And the self-gratification sometimes is, I see my friend and she's got this kind of, I don't know, Gucci bag, or she travels, or I don't know what it is.
Exactly.
And this is how I'm going to get it. Without, as Chams said, the consequences that we bring our children, the environment that we have them in, because we are not authentic ourselves. We don't believe in ourselves. So I can never just look at only the men in terms of sexual violence. I think sexual violence can be pervaded upon ourselves. We can be violent to ourselves as well without even recognizing it.
That's so true.
The violence that occurs, that's the effect of the situation. It's not the cause. Something is causing the violence. The violence is the effect. So what we need to examine, what are the causes?
Yes, and we're not, and not only that, deal with the causes.
That's right.
And the thing is, it's not rocket science.
That's right.
Everything we're talking about is part of that.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Mr. Hippolyte, as a man, I'd love to hear this. I want to say something to you in terms of some of the studies and statistics, all right? Men are more likely to commit sexual violence in communities where sexual violence goes unpunished, all right? Now, the word on the street, that's the word on the street. I get the word on the street as a coach, is that it doesn't really people get off. People are able to do these sorts of violence and get away with it, whether it be against children, women, or even men, but they can get away with it. What do you say about that?
Boy. I don't know. I'm from the old school, okay? I believe I was taught, there you go, it's all about being taught. I was taught by my parents, especially my father, to respect a woman. You're there to assist a woman to elevate. You elevate together, you grow together. I was taught to take my time, even during the courting process. You take your time, you go through stages. It is amazing now, Angie, that I have male friends of mine who kind of share that same type of belief of you, who have been told by females after probably just 2 weeks or 3 weeks of just casual getting to know each other, do you have a problem? Do you have a problem because are you slow? Are you stupid? Are you dumb? Like, you don't like me?
Or what's wrong with you?
Or what is wrong with you? What we speak about this generation gap. Maybe one of the ladies around the table could tell me what really happened, because what I was taught, what my parents back in the day taught me about taking your time and whatsoever, I supposed to pass this on to my child, right? But what I'm saying is, it's almost as if like there was no passing on, or even if there were, like, was there some type of psychological block in a certain generation where those young persons just didn't want to listen, and now they're listening to everybody else, they listen to every other influence? What happened? Honestly, what happened? Because I'm sure all you ladies around the table here could say that back in the day, the type of values that our parents, our ancestors, what they instilled into us. But should we have passed it on? Why wasn't it passed on?
It's not that it wasn't passed on. I wouldn't say that. But as we grow and as we develop values, things that were taught to us along the way, we make our own decisions. We pick things up. We drop what we do not want. We pick up what we want to.
So it's about choice.
And it's
a matter of choice.
Values. What society places the value on. Women, for the years, females have been objectified.
Exactly.
Females have been portrayed in a particular way. And it is no mistake that young women want to be sexy.
Exactly.
Hold on, Chams. I just want to chime in because the question was asked, and you're going in the right place. But we have to remember the power of the television and the media, and it's a constant visual, because that's how we learn. Visualization is the most powerful thing. And we don't go to church that often. I mean, I don't know. Does anybody in here go to church regularly? All right, weddings and funerals, it seems. Yeah, but the word of God is not the same as the word of the television.
Exactly. And so what do they see? A lot of these young girls are products of sexual abuse. They recognize the power of sex on that male person. That male person tells them, I like you, I love you. They give them gifts, they do things. And so if you're going to be caught in them in a later, and you behaving differently, something is wrong. You don't love me. So it's a lot of twisted minds, a lot of stuff that has happened, and through the years we've not responded as a society quickly enough to recognize it. A lot of it went unnoticed. A lot of women, a lot of persons, men and women who had no business having children, created children in the mess. You don't understand yourself, but you bring in another life into the world.
Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Angie.
How are you?
Yeah, not too bad.
You're going to join our conversation.
I contribute. It's very, very fast. Right. I was watching a meeting the other day on the telly with Dr. King, Dr. Didier. Dr. King was the chairperson. And Dr. Didier said something. He said during the carnival, a lady was coming to visit his wife with a 10-year-old But before they come in, they stand up and watching the carnival going down the road. And the child looked at the mother and said to the mother, "Mom, let's go. Those people is behaving like dogs."
Wow.
Now, I wonder, I said, but dogs? But a dog goes on all fours. Human walk on two legs. But those people, some of those women, they are mothers of 4, 5, 3. And they bend themselves, putting their 2 hands on the road. And a man behind them whining, and they whining. They don't even know if the children is on the side of the road watching that going on in the public. Then we have all sorts of other festival coming to this country where I can see
Mercury.
seducing going there.
You say that.
Mercury.
Okay? Seducing. So there's a lot of things going on in this country. Bye-bye.
Thank you, caller. Yeah, there you go. Well, we know what his view is. That's a very clear view.
And he's very correct. When you look at these types of things happening in our society, it contributes to disrespect for women.
I think disrespect for all. I'm going to say
all,
that
yes.
because
Yes.
we all have a
Yes.
young man, and the sort of thing that he might be doing, he will think that he's being sexual. He'll
Yes.
think that it's great, but does he understand that there might be a level of disrespect in his behavior? It's twofold.
Definitely.
That is why you see the media. Oh yes. The media has a great responsibility to play in the mindset of society. Angie, there are great things happening in this country. The same way we're speaking about the negative and the issues, there are great things happening in the country. I've been hearing most times, a youth is suspecting a murder, but guess what? There are lots of youth doing great things, doing debates, doing cleanup campaigns and so on. But what gets the headline? What gets the headline? What gets the front page? I remember having a discussion with a media practitioner. He came to my office and I said, "Listen, man, I have sent out about 5 press releases to you. There are 4 of those press releases speak to the community projects that the police is doing, what we have done to assist a vulnerable person. I didn't hate on the media house, but the 5th one about the homicide, it got a lot of airplay. You know what he told me? He told me that's what the people want to hear.
Bad news sells, doesn't it? But that's globally.
It leads.
Yeah, but the thing is,
So what do we do?
We have followed. It's like, look, we don't have to follow every trend. Some trends are great, and why not? Others we might say no. So yeah.
It's funny why we select the trends that we follow, because in developing countries now it's passé to use women to sell products.
Exactly.
There's so many creative ways that the advertisers develop now to sell their products that will have you even enjoying watching advertisements. So why do we still hold on to
Because
sticking,
sex sells.
and so we need to understand what it is that we want to adopt and move with the times.
Well, that's the point, because you see, it's about choices. We
Choices,
know no matter
yes.
what we want to say, we can talk.
Yeah.
Right? We can talk.
Yeah.
And some young people will say, listen to them talking, right? Sex sells. But it's up to us if we want to choose another way to sell,
Exactly.
knowing that it's going to help to carve and shape some of the minds of those who are younger and coming in, and they're going to be the leaders of our society. Look, there's an association, all right, research has shown it, between rape and pornography. Now, if we link it to our caller with regards to, they talk about the way that our costumes have become more and more skimpy. Now it's just about covering the nipple or the areola, right? And it's controversial because some people say they just want to free up themselves. But there is an association between rape, pornography, and the way women are objectified. So why is it that we don't take this much more seriously with regards to, if we have stable minds, if our children are taught the skills, as you said, Silvie, coping skills, what did you term it as?
coping skills, how to deal with issues.
And life. If we have this sort of thing, then maybe our children would be more discerning in their choices, surely.
But Angie, that's just one aspect of it, because how do we explain the rape of babies and grandmothers, people who are invalids, persons who are elderly and unable to take care of themselves? So there's a deeper problem that we need to look at. There are, mental issues, developmental issues that we don't pick up. Maybe the parents are not equipped to pick up these signs, and these children go through the school system. They interact with us, but we tend to ignore, we tend to pull away.
Yeah.
And so we don't pick up those signals and provide it. We're too much of a small society to be so overwhelmed by some of the things that we have. And, like I said before, each and every one of us take that responsibility. We're very afraid now to speak to, children.
And that wasn't so a few years ago, was it?
To point out, because, the parent might curse me, and we need to be able to take our society back if we want to see the things that we know that is right, because it's not all, it's just one aspect of it. It's, where, because of the way women behave, and it is all correlated. Women behave the way they behave because they think that's what men want,
One of the things we need to understand, though, is that rape is not about sex.
Exactly.
No, it's a power dynamic.
It's a power, that's right.
Yeah.
Which would explain rape against children, rape against the elderly. It's not about sex. It's not about them being sexy.
Exactly.
It's about power and dominance. That's right. However, when it comes to rape and the correlation between that and pornography, what happens in the individual's mind is that it's not a person that they're overpowering. It's an object. Yeah, exactly. And that's the association.
But when you also look at the offenders, the sexual offenders, what is in place for the sexual offenders? What, we arrest them, we take them to church.
Very good.
Rehabilitation. There's the thing. They will be on bail.
We have a caller. Good morning, caller.
Morning, Angie. Me again. Let me ask you another question. Have we addressed the issue of human sexuality and the need and the powerful drive associated with it?
Could you repeat that again?
Have anything to do with people, because of their need, disregarding everything else to satisfy that need?
Could you repeat that again for me? I'm sorry, the line was a bit
bad. Human sexuality is a powerful driver, and there is the need. Every one of us seems to have this drive, this need for sexual interaction and so on. So my question is the drive, the need that we have, overriding everything else?
Okay.
No,
in some situations it's true, because you see in abusive where people are physical, it's because they have poor impulse control. They cannot control the impulses that drive to do things, and you see that is why some people end up doing things that are against the law, because they have poor impulse control. If they have that urge to hit, they will just hit without thinking. If they feel I have the urge to that's the woman I want and I must get her, you cannot say no to me, they will just go into it.
You see, sex it's a natural, innate urge. It's a basic requirement, basic need. We as a society, we need to open the dialogue about sex.
Yeah, take away the shame and the embarrassment.
Right. It's still considered a taboo.
Yeah.
And therefore, when you open conversations and you start talking about sex, people think that something is wrong, because it's still considered something that is intimate and behind closed doors. So you don't talk about it openly. If we were to start dialogue like that, and like the gentleman said, recognize that it is an urge, and we need to identify what are the appropriate and maladaptive responses to that urge. But unless we have that dialogue on a national level, then it is always going to be seen as something secretive, and persons will not learn how to healthily address these urges.
Which is why we seem as a society, when you look at it lawfully, we look at sexual offenders like any other offender, but a sexual offender is not like someone who goes to steal. While this person is still on bail, they will still have that urge. Even though they've served 10 years and they come out, they will still have that urge.
They still have it. And what has changed?
And that's why there's a high rate of recidivism when it comes to sexual offenders.
Yeah, because we haven't really done anything about it. Chams, what do you say?
I agree. And we need to, one of the things, for example, we spoke about it earlier, in recognizing that the need for persons to get help. We need to even change the cultural reluctance that we have to seek help, to seek counseling. There are a lot of counselors available at all levels. You can get somebody to talk to your problem, to talk about your problem with.
But Chams, I want to jump in there because we're hearing this much more in St. Lucia, maybe the last couple of years. But you will still get, and I'm going to deal with a man in particular, or a woman, either way, that they will not seek help.
And that is exactly
and no matter
what they need to
say, and those are the people usually that need it the most. And you can, it's like an unbreakable barrier. And you can see the destruction going on, whether it be within the home, whether it be in a relationship or their careers or to themselves.
And even in the workplace, sometimes when you see people exhibiting that level of dysfunction, as an employer, you perhaps need to make it mandatory that you get help or you will lose your job. You know, I mean, we need to go through these extremes because people have that thing, oh, that's how I am. Life is a process, and we learn and we unlearn and we change. The Ministry of the Public Service, I'm pleased to say, is putting on an employee assistance program to deal with the increasing numbers of persons who seem unable to cope with the problems, you know, day-to-day problems. And this is something that we have to emulate throughout the society. Like Silvie said earlier, I think the human resource departments need to pay a little more attention. We need to stop compartmentalizing individuals. You come to work with me from 8 to 4 and that's all you are. I don't know anything else about you. And all I am concerned about is you produce. But there is something else happening with that person. So we need to be a little more caring as a society. We need to make it acceptable. We've been working as a department of the police for a number of years now. And we've been trying to, and you know, with some success, I must say, telling them that you need to be accepting and understand that men will come to report cases of abuse.
That's right.
And your attitude has to change. So the word needs to be out there that if I go to the police station to report that this woman has violated me in one way or the other, no officer will laugh at me, but will offer me the support and the service that I need.
I want to ask Mr. Hippolyte, answer that question, please.
No,
you know, what percentage really of our police here in St. Lucia wouldn't laugh if a man presents himself and he's been violated by his wife?
I honestly believe that years ago, this happened a lot. Honestly, I honestly believe that happened a lot. I heard a lot of reports about it, and it's because it happened years ago, and this has been placed into our social consciousness that this is what happened. We sometimes believe it is still happening. It is still happening. And what I want to say to those men out there who hear me, who listen to my voice, if it does happen, report that police officer. It is not ethical, it's not professional behavior. When you come to that station to make a report, you come, you're a victim, you're expecting service, professional service. And if a police officer makes any, whether it be some type of remark or act in a way to make you feel insulted or embarrassed because of the report you have made, you need to report this individual. This is something, ma'am, that we have been speaking to our members about. We've heard it. We have not received any report that it has happened, but it is still out there in the consciousness of men that if I go to the station and say, listen, this woman touched me in a way that I didn't like, that the police officer will not take them seriously. And it is something that we've been saying.
We're speaking of the police officers, but what about even their friends, their old male counterparts? They cannot even talk to their friends about it. Because if they go to their male friends and talk about it, they will also be laughed at.
What is that word they use here? Gopwell?
Yes, you have
these
you are
sorts of things?
Gopwell, or you are a Hillary, you are this and you are that.
It's true.
And I think a lot of our men, like, I believe that they were not taught, or they did not learn how to express feelings. You understand, how to fit into somebody else's world,
seriously discouraged.
Understand, not even to show empathy, you know, to empathize, because just listening to somebody else's story, you know, and seeing how the person is feeling about that story should by all means have an effect on you, where you would be able to empathize with this person. And then you find in a situation where a friend, a male friend, should be empathizing, he would be laughing at.
Yeah, because it actually happened to me, as a young constable. I remember I had a problem at home, and I went to my supervisor as I came to work late. I could have just told him I was late, but I wanted someone to speak to. And I remember him very well, I still see him, he's no longer a police officer. And I went to his office and I said, sir, I have this problem. And I just told him everything. And he went and told the guys in the barracks what I said. And man, I got jokes. I got jokes. And now, as an individual, I now empathize and now listen. But no one taught me. I learned it all on my own.
And when that happens, what happens? Like you lose trust. You're gonna trust anymore. You shut down. You don't want to talk. You don't want to speak about what's going on with you.
No one.
And the more you don't talk about what is happening with you, the more likely it is to reoccur. It's going to continue in your life. It could cause you to be stressed. You can begin to self-harm. You can end up hurting. You begin. You have that anger against everybody, society, your close ones, and everybody else. You begin to blame everybody. So we have to create that avenue where people, especially our males, will feel comfortable. Knowing that they can come.
But Silvie, you illustrate such a good point, right? What about where the man is getting jokes from his friends, but the wife, the woman, she's not particularly an ear for him. She's not particularly a support for him. And
understand the domino effect. Understand the domino effect of this. This is why we've had so many instances of suicide being committed by men.
And increasing, and it's increasing globally.
That's right. That's the end result of it, because men are unable to find an avenue, go to a friend in confidence, and say, "Listen, this is what is happening with me." They don't have an outlet.
And it's a number of things. They can't go to a friend. They're not really maybe getting the support of their partner. Because of the way they feel about counselors and therapy, they're not going to go there. And maybe the only place is in the bottle. Alcohol.
Exactly. You find we're not even talking about how they feel about themselves, their value, their self-worth, how they feel about themselves. That further, diminishes how they feel about themselves. And so, they begin to look at themselves as a lesser person, or maybe to get their attention, I'm already a bad person, so I may just do bad.
So as a society, and we don't pay. We not only is the self harm that they, but we just diminish violence among males, male on male. It's something that happens. We spring up and we react, and we expect a response when there seems to be an increase in the level of violence against women. Yes. But it's an everyday occurrence. What happens when these young men, men of all ages, they behave they kill each other, or their behavior, the reckless behavior, they drink and they're on the road, so they hurt themselves, they hurt other people. As a society, that is something, globally really, we do not pay enough attention to the level of violence against males, and males on themselves, and the behaviors that they do, the things they do to harm themselves.
All right, what we're going to do when we go to a break, and when we come back, I'd like for each of you to think of, in terms of solutions. All right, we've discussed a lot of things with regards to why all of this happens, and I think for our listeners it's great because they can begin to think, okay, this is what I might be able to do, etc. But let us look to what can we do, whether it's that there are more people reporting the cases, whether that's the reason that we have the increase, or is it that we have increases also because of the types of media that we have and the lack of values that we have, or a culmination of many things. Let's talk about that when we come back from the break. Yeah, welcome back to the show. You've been listening to Angie the Voice Montoute here on wVENT. As you know, if you have been tuned in, we have a round panel discussion, and we call it our round table here at wVENT. We have Chams Gasperd, Director of Gender Relations, Silvie Edwards, Manager and Councilor of the Women's Support Centre, Janelle Nelson, and that is she's clinical psychologist and at the Division of Human Services, right, Janelle? And Mr. Zachery Hippolyte, and you are Corporal Zachery Hippolyte, right, of the Royal St.lucia Police Force. All right, now, before we went to the break, We've gone right round, I think, with regards to a lot of the issues that we have. But whatever we want to say, we do have an increase, it would seem, with regards to some of the violence, and sexual violence is definitely right in there with all of that. And understanding the facts and dispelling some of the myths surrounding sexual assault, I think it's crucial. But particularly so, I'd like to get to some of the solutions that we think we might be able to throw out there. All right? Who's going to start? Let's have Mr. Hippolyte.
Okay. Well, I have some tips. I have some tips there, especially when it comes to there's this classification of rape we call date rape.
Yeah.
So whoever's listening, get ready, because it's very informative. And I'd like to encourage listeners to, as much as possible, you need to read the laws that govern you. There's so much information out there. We use social media and technology every day to do all other stuff except elevate ourselves and educate ourselves. And to visit the Facebook page, since you're already on social media, to visit the Facebook page of the Royal Central Police Force, because there we usually post tips and all forms of information that could assist you. Rapists are not always strangers or anonymous attackers. When someone you know, I say it again, when someone you know, a date, a steady boyfriend, casual friend, partner, forces you to have sex, it is rape.
Yeah.
According to Section 123 of the Criminal Code of St. Lucia 2008, any person who has sexual intercourse with another, A, with the consent, without the consent of that other, or B, without believing that the other consents to such intercourse, or is reckless as to whether the other person consents or not, commits the offense of rape. And here are some tips, especially the young ones. Please listen. Do not let alcohol or other drugs decrease or interfere with your ability to take care of yourself and make sensible decisions. Just recently we heard Dr. King speak to the effects of alcohol on our decisions, especially there's a correlation to people's attitude and behaviors on offenses. Do not accept beverages from someone you don't know and trust. And even if it is from someone you know, always watch your drink and never leave it unattended at any time. This is reality. Follow your instincts. If a place or the way your date acts makes you nervous or uneasy, get out. If you need to call a friend to escort you home, don't hesitate to do so. Do a background check on a first date or a blind date with friends or family. Meet in public places. Always do a background check. You see, we spoke about again the instant gratification. We don't want to take our time to know people. We do not want to take our time. Ladies and gentlemen, it is important. Don't leave a social event with someone you have just met or don't know well. There you go. Make use of technology. When you're going out on a date with somebody, send the details about your date to some other individual, their vehicle, who they are, where you're going via your smartphone. Sending a picture of your date or their vehicle would really assist with the investigations if you do become a victim of rape or any form of sexual offense. And ensure you have enough cash to call a taxi, or better, if you own one, take your own car. So these are some of the tips we usually put out there, letting individuals know that you need to be careful, be aware, use logics. And ladies, I'm sure you'll agree, sometimes we know when something is wrong. Sometimes we know this individual we're interacting with.
Yes, your intuition.
Intuition. Ladies, use it, please. It's important. I believe in the woman's intuition.
Yeah, it does.
You guys are usually right.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I think that's good advice. I must tell you that some of that, I have a collection of girlfriends that we have. We've been friends for many years, and even when we're in different countries, we send each other lists and updates with regards to if anybody's meeting a new person.
Excellent.
So good advice. All right, Janelle.
To resolve the issue of violence in our society, two things I think are critical, and the first being an increase in social support services. It's critical to the functioning of your society, because these support services would provide a buffer, especially in communities, urban communities, rural communities. You go into the communities and you educate the population. educate them, as Mr. Hippolyte said, about recognizing these signs, recognizing different forms of abuse, knowing what domestic violence is. Public education is critical to improve the situation.
How good is your department at that?
Really good, actually.
Really?
We're severely short-staffed.
As usual.
I must say that.
That's a serious challenge.
However, we have social workers who would go out into the community, do their investigations, and make the public aware of what the signs and signs of abuse would be.
All right. Well, sounds like maybe we'll have to have another show and just at some point, because time is running. Yeah, but that's good to know.
Secondly, like I said before, zero tolerance for violence, and that doesn't just start with us here on the middle level. That starts with legislators and policymakers. If, as a society, we recognize the harmful effects of violence, not just against women, not just against men, not just against children, if we recognize that violence on the whole is contravening the basic rights of human beings, then we will start putting policies in place to curb violence against every single human being.
Yeah, well, it comes back to almost our humanity and our human rights.
Definitely.
All right, Silvie, please.
On a department level, based on our department, what we do is a lot of sensitization. We have this program where we went into the school. We have a teen dating violence program because we recognize that a lot of young children who are still at the school age or still at school are involved in dating violence. And so we've developed a program where we go into the schools to educate the students about dating violence. And it's basically all of what you said. We teach them that. We also went to all of the health centers on island last year just so we could get a feel of all ages at the clinics, the various community clinics, so that we could educate people on what is domestic violence, the signs of an abusive partner, an abusive relationship, because if you do not know the signs and you get involved with someone, it could lead to sexual violence and all the other forms of abuse.
Just illustrate very quickly some of the signs.
Some of the signs: a partner who gives you curfews, a very jealous, a possessive, obsessive partner, a partner who forces you to have sex, who beats or hits you, partner who threatens you, a partner who follows you around to ensure that you are not lying or cheating, a partner who does not want you to spend time with your family and friends. Isolation.
Yes, that's a real red flag. That's a big one.
Can I just quickly say that most wives give curfews?
So that is an abusive relationship.
Corporal Hippolyte, whoever told you that life was fair?
And there is one big one. You are in constant fear of your partner. As a result, you try to do everything right.
Yes.
You shouldn't be in a relationship with anybody that you're afraid of, somebody you cannot ask a question, you cannot communicate with, you cannot have a laugh with. You have to ask a question, you're walking on eggshells, your heart beating, you feeling that's not a healthy relationship.
And can I just chime one in as well? One that often doesn't get as much publicity. Verbal.
Oh, yes.
Just by words. Somebody that smiles, somebody who would never raise their hand, somebody that everybody else thinks is sweet, like anything. But that verbal, breaking you down. Okay, Chams, you're going to take us almost to the close.
I think it's important that victims understand the need to report. Most rapists are multiple offenders, and your report may very well stop another case from happening. So it's important that we report. As a country, as a state, we need to increase the support services, like was said before. We need to increase our response as a justice system to get solutions to those cases. It was said earlier, offenders will do it because they know they can get away with it. So we need to increase those cases. Enforcement. We have legislation. I always say that as a country we have some of the most progressive pieces of legislation. But as citizens, we need to know our rights.
But not only that,
increase our knowledge.
We have the legislation, but we are bad at enforcement.
Enforcement. And that is what is important. And if we begin to increase our individual knowledge, know what is our right, know what is available for us, and demand that the services be provided. Demand when we go into the police station that the officer ought to respond in a particular manner and know that there is somewhere I can go to when I
That's right.
don't get that response. But too often we throw up our hands and say, that's how I am. We have that personal responsibility. Another important part of our work at the department is to get men more involved in speaking out against violence against women. For too often we've seen men as the problem, and we need to shift that to see men as part of the solution. So men need to stand up to, support your male colleagues. Be that support. Don't laugh at them. Let them know that they can come to speak to you. Support them in getting the help that they need. We need to, as a society, change that culture where we don't want people to know our business. When you think people don't know, it's all out there. So get the help that you need from a professional who can assist you, somebody you feel comfortable with. It is about changing the way we do things, changing our acceptance. It does not work for us. It does not work. Examine what is causing you to be who you are. If you're not happy with who you are, examine where's this behavior coming from, and to seek that help we need to make that change.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's well said to all of you, really, to be honest. I think it's a shame that we don't have more time. We need more time, don't we, really? Because it's a serious issue.
So much to speak about. So
yeah, and we've just scratched the surface, really. I think we have only scratched the surface.
Angie, just quickly, I'd like to say that persons who are experiencing cases of domestic violence can call our 202 hotline. It's a 24-hour hotline service. And the newly installed, very functional National Health Helpline, 203. So, and the existing services, Human Services, the Department of Gender Relations, the Crisis Center, the Vulnerable Persons Unit, the Family Court, these are institutions that are ready and able to assist as far as they can.
Is it confidential, Chams?
Very confidential.
Yes, it is.
Very,
Really?
very confidential.
You stand by that?
I stand
All
by
right.
that.
Yes.
Now, the other thing as well that I'd like to ask, because, we may have individuals out there who are listening right now on this wVent radio, and it could be a man or a woman, either way, or even a child, with regards to sexual violence and abuse, domestic abuse. What would you say to anybody right now who's too afraid to speak up? What would you say?
I think that the silence is what's given that perpetrator the power. And as soon as you tell that story to somebody you can trust, get away, and that power begins to be diminished. Right. And that is what keeps them in that situation. They're afraid, they're embarrassed, they're ashamed. Break that silence. You need to speak to somebody. The abuse is not going to stop on its own unless one of you die. And so that's how serious it is. It is not going to stop on its own. The only way it can stop is if one of the parties get help. And so you need to speak out. You need to understand that, there is a help available. Get that courage. Speak to somebody, speak to a friend, but, seek the help that is in place for you.
And Mr. Hippolyte, I see you wanted to say something.
No, as a public speaker myself, it's just how important it is to speak out. This is so powerful. The voice is a powerful weapon. I honestly wish that even when you look at our education system, the curriculum, from a very tender age, we should be teaching our young people to speak up.
Well, that's the very opposite of what we were told we were young.
Exactly.
We were supposed to be seen and not heard.
Seen and not heard.
Yes, and this permeates our psyche.
That's the thing.
And these are some of the contradictions, Andrew. These are some of the things that we need to change. We tell our young men don't cry, but as adults we expect them to be sensitive to our needs. We frustrated as parents, so we say, child, stop talking in my head. These are things we hear every day, but then you expect the child to speak up at another event. So we need to examine these messages, these mixed messages that we send out that turns out totally confused individuals. And we owe it to ourselves not to live this world the same way we got it, and not to just understand that this is how I am. As long as we have life, get the help you need to make the changes that can make you a better you.
Yes,
especially with regards to children. I believe that we need to listen to our kids. Very often our kids may want to communicate with us, want to tell us something, and we always ask them to shut up. When a report of abuse has been made to you, you have the responsibility to report, whether it is the mother, the father. You don't have to fear none of these people. You have a responsibility to report it. So know that when children come to you with cases of abuse, do not just let it fall on a side and do nothing about it. You have a responsibility, whether you're the mother, whether you're the father, whether you're not a relative, whether you're just a friend of the child. I know the child confide in you and the child would not want you, but you need to allow that child to understand that I cannot keep it a secret. It is something that happened, and it is a bad thing that which happened to you. So I have a right to report it, because it's when you do not report, it continues, like Ms. Gasperd said earlier on, it continues to reoccur in the child's life. So we have to do something about it. People often tell me about the adults in abusive relationships. What do we do? I always tell them that the adults have a responsibility to report. If it's a child, I can make an intervention on behalf of a child, but when it's an adult, the adult has to come forward.
Yeah, but this is the problem. When you go back to domestic abuse and you have a woman who's so eroded with regards to her self-esteem, her self-worth, she's terrified, and then we are saying that we expect you to report it. And very often it's the reverse.
It's difficult, we know that, but like we always say to people, we send out the message out there. We tell them of the support systems that are available to help them. If somebody confides in somebody else that they're being abused, we often say to this person that you need to encourage her and tell her that there is help available. There are people that you can talk to. There is a 202 hotline. You do not have to do it while the perpetrator is around.
Okay,
or
Silvie.
any minute, any time you get.
I'm so sorry. I'm looking at the time. It's 10 to 12, and we're way over. All right, and we have to close. I'm afraid.
Okay.
You had something you just wanted to sneak in. Can you do 20 seconds?
Yeah, 20 seconds. Just want to let persons know it's actually an offense not to report a suspected case of abuse. Section 119 says that you must make that report.
So if say a child were to go to a parent and say that they had been abused, sexually abused, and the parent does not report it, it's an offense.
It's an offense, and let's say if some other person or somehow the police happens to find out that abuse did happen, and on interviewing that child, the child says, I did tell my mother, I did tell the teacher, they didn't do anything. We can charge this person can be taken to court and be liable on summary conviction for $1,000.
And very quickly, Angie, there is legislation against what we call the washima. It's there.
Yeah.
So if you know of any case where somebody is accepting some benefit, some monetary payment for, keeping quiet about a case, you report it.
We need to come back, Angie.
Yeah, we need to come back. We're only just starting now. All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to close very quickly, but I want to say thank you to Chams Gasperd, Silvie Edwards, Janelle Nelson, and Mr. Zachery Hippolyte. Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you. Welcome. Bye-bye. There you go. That was a very, very intense discussion there. I think we covered as much as we could in the short time, but it's definitely one of those where we need more time. The lines are still open, by the way. The number is 452-8368. I'm going to go to a very brief break, and then when we come back, we'll have a little track, and then we might have a few minutes for us to talk about one or two things. Not too much, though, as it is, because, as you can see, we don't have much time. And, as you can hear, I can hear Mr. Hippolyte's voice in the background there, enjoying himself. There you go. All right, let's go to a quick break.